George made the world stop and look at itself in the mirror.
The death of George Floyd transformed this nation.
Derek Chauvin has been charged with murder and with manslaughter.
He couldn't breathe.
Huge breaking news out of Minneapolis involving the George Floyd case.
He was known to be a problem officer. He was spreading his harm by teaching other officers.
Trying this case will not be an easy thing.
This can be a big step in getting justice for black people.
We need transparency, especially right now.
Court TV cameras will be inside that courtroom.
This is not a typical case, and we're not living under normal circumstances.
What a day it has been.
We've seen some riveting testimony and disturbing evidence, but what is next?
If Derek Chauvin is found not guilty, then it's very unlikely these prosecutors would have a case against the other three.
Truth will help lead to justice.
The whole country will be watching this.
You don't know what's going to happen at a trial. You just don't know.
And our teams will be live for every moment.
Everyone knows the story. Now they're going to see what happens inside the courtroom.
We're not going to prejudge the facts, though the video is so clear before our eyes. Why? Because at the end of this process, we want nobody to be able to question the process. And whatever the consequences may be, they will be just, they will be fair, and they will be what the law requires.
We are just 19 days away from the start of the George Floyd trial. And for those of you who don't know, the case has been severed. So the first defendant will be Derek Chauvin. He was the lead officer there with his knee on George Floyd's neck. The other three scheduled to be tried during the summer. The man you just heard speak, that's Keith Ellison. He's the Attorney General of Minnesota. He's the lead prosecutor in this case. He's the one that's in charge of it. And he is under fire today by the defense. The defense wants him sanctioned. The defense wants him investigated by the Minnesota Bar Association. They're saying he's not playing fair, he's playing dirty, he's not playing by the rules. Today, another filing in court, this one by the attorneys for J. Alexander Kueng, one of those three who will be charged in the summer. Let me put up on the screen what they are alleging here. It's a motion for dismissal and sanctions against prosecutors. On December 11th, 2020, co-defendant Tu Tao, through counsel, filed a motion for sanctions and hearing regarding discovery violations by the state with accompanying affidavits. The facts outlined in the motion document the appalling practices regarding disclosure of exculpatory information. That's a magic word in the law, exculpatory information. Unfortunately, the state's misconduct did not cease. Here's what they're looking for in part, folks. 1, issue a finding that there's probable cause to believe that Keith Ellison, Matthew Frank, and Neil Katyal have committed prosecutorial misconduct. Also, they want the judge to direct a live-bodied hearing to take testimony from the attorneys referenced in one above. They're talking about the prosecutors in this case, as well as all special prosecutors and staff working on this matter to determine the depth of the state's breach of their duties. Refer Mr. Ellison and Mr. Frank to the Minnesota Lawyers Professional Responsibility Board for further investigation. They also want the judge to issue an order rescinding the privileges of all lawyers who have been brought into this matter as pro hoc vici counsel. Those are attorneys brought in by the prosecution from other states who aren't members of the Minnesota Bar. They don't want to let them try this case. Also, issue an order dismissing the criminal charges against Mr. Kueng with prejudice, meaning you can't bring them again. I can tell you right now that's not happening, but they're going to try. Let's bring back in our think tank. All right, what is going? This is for real. I mean, this isn't just another day at the courthouse, is it, Jeffrey Wolf? I mean, these are fighting words. I mean, how many times have you asked for a prosecutor to be referred for sanctions and to have a pro hoc vici counsel kicked off the case?
Well, that's zero, Vinny. This is not normal at the courthouse. It is normal to have discovery issues, to bring them to the court's attention, to ask for sanctions. To ask for full dismissal of the case is also very common. It is the most drastic remedy available to the court. And so when you ask for that, you are kind of shooting for the moon and grabbing stars on the way down and trying to get some other level of sanction. But to personally ask that these prosecutors be referred to the Minnesota bar is, I can't think of a time when I've heard it happen. I have absolutely seen defense attorneys point their fingers at prosecutors and say that they're not doing their ethical duty. I have been in that situation before, but I don't believe that I have ever heard of or seen anyone actually make the request of the judge. The judge is obligated, if they think that ethical rules aren't followed, to make a referral to the bar, in Colorado at least. We've gone over that other states can do different things. But this is the Hail Mary of Hail Marys in one of the more high-profile cases this country will ever see. And they're not going to get their dismissal. But the reason that they're shooting for the moon is to grab stars on the way down.
What's going on here, Eklund?
That was the most ambitious motion I have ever read. We have seen Brady violations. We have, motions for Brady violations. Prosecutors not.
What's a Brady violation? Let the folks at home know what a Brady violation is.
A Brady violation is when the prosecutor has not provided exculpatory evidence. Evidence that can potentially free your client. There's a duty that the prosecutor is supposed to provide all the evidence that they have, and then provide it to defense attorneys, and we do our work. Now, that happens. Even Brady violations are really hard to. Those motions are really hard to grant. But this one took the cake. They went, as my co-counsel said it, they went from the top to the bottom, and it was very ambitious. They are starting this with fighting words. I don't think that they put themselves in a great position for trial, especially with the prosecutor. Although we are different sides, that doesn't mean that we can't be cordial. But calling for sanctions, calling for my bar card is pretty ambitious. I don't think it was the best move for counsel in this case. They also requested, the prosecution in this case actually requested continuances based off of COVID. So that could have been an issue with discovery. So for counsel to just be like, let's get their bar cards, I think that was in poor taste, and it was a poor decision.
Monica, another issue that they're dealing with is they are alleging leaks by the prosecution here. There was a motion filed by Tutel talking about those leaks, about an alleged plea agreement that Chauvin had entered into. They want these prosecutors up on the witness stand to have to testify about that. Do you think the judge orders a hearing to find out who the leaker is?
I don't think so, because bottom line, does it really affect the trial and what's going forward with
They say yes. They say they can't get a fair trial now because if he was willing to admit and enter a plea agreement for third-degree murder, then he's saying he's guilty, and the world's going to hear about it because of the leak.
Just because someone wants to enter into a plea agreement doesn't mean that they believe they're guilty. It's a weighing of the risks and benefits. If he sees that if he gets caught up on first-degree murder, he could go to prison for the rest of his life. If he's on third degree, he takes the risk, or he takes the benefit of getting less time. So just because you plead guilty does not mean that you actually believe you're guilty. But I think an issue here that we don't know enough yet is how extensive are these alleged violations or ethical violations by the prosecutor. Let me just take you back, 8 years or so with the Arias trial. And there was allegation after allegation against the prosecutor for misconduct. And the appeals court said, yeah, there was a ton of misconduct. But you know what? Bottom line, it didn't affect the facts enough to where it would reverse the case. Same here. No matter about this leak or about these ethical violations, if it's not enough to override the facts, then it doesn't really matter. But I think it's pretty normal, at least here in Arizona, where the defense attorneys are saying the prosecutors are a bunch of jerks and they don't follow ethics, or maybe it's just a small group of prosecutors here.
All right. And stop picking on Juan Martinez. Stop it.
Why? It's
not
so
on my
easy.
show. Not on my
He screwed
show.
up.
All right.
And he lost.
Another day, Monica Lindstrom. All right, when we come back, we're going to take you on the docket, a case we're following out of Tennessee. Extremely tragic. Some young folks, in their 20s, hanging out at a bar. That's what you do in your 20s, right? You socialize. This is in Nashville. Ends up with 2 men stabbed to death. We've got that story when we come back.